Hello and welcome to the Spotlight on CSAJ's Expert Advisors. Today we're thrilled to put our spotlight on Kip Hawley, who is with the Kirwan Institute. Just to start us off, CSAJ really strives to develop and promote transformative advocacy that removes systemic barriers, enhances organizational response, and improves professional practices to meet the self-defined needs of domestic and sexual violence survivors. This work really centers around many intersections that has evolved from the intersection of poverty and domestic violence. So to do this work, multiple and diverse partnerships are critical, and we're thrilled to work in partnership with diverse anti-poverty, race equity, and violence against women activists in CSAJ's Racial and Economic Equity for Survivors project, which aims to shift the current violence against women paradigm and develop common languages for doing this race equity work. So as I mentioned, we're welcome and honored by Kip, who is going to share a little bit about who they are, your work and partnership with us, as well as offer some reflections on the challenges you're seeing, the frameworks you operate within, and some visions for our collective movement building. So thank you very much. Welcome and take it away, Kip.
Well, thanks, Sarah. As Sarah said, my name is Kip Hawley, and I am a research associate here at the Kirwan Institute for the Study of Race and Ethnicity at The Ohio State University. My specialty is civic engagement, social capital, and social justice. I study how people sort of navigate race in community spaces, in interpersonal relationships, and sort of how that relates to access to opportunity. I've been with the Kirwan Institute for about 5 years in doing this work for the most part. Also doing a little bit of work in our opportunity mapping section, which some people may have heard of, where we map opportunity in communities and talk about who has access and who doesn't have access to that work. But this is also a part of our work, and I'll be talking a little bit about the rest of it as it goes forward. We're interested, and what really brought us to this work with CSAJ and the rest of the partners around the table is to sort of deepen our understanding of all the forms of inequality in our communities. We Institute and Applied Research Institute to be able to understand all the sort of aspects of inequality that people face, and think about inequality not just in terms of data and numbers, but in terms of experiences as well. And we also, as an applied research institute, want to take that knowledge, and we do take that knowledge and work with communities, organizations, all around the country to address inequality. So really this chance to work around domestic violence gives us a chance to, at first, better understand structural barriers that we talk about a lot, influence domestic violence survivor resources, and who has access and who does not have access to those things. But it will also help us to use the tools that we have to be able to make a difference in that particular part of inequality, along with the rest of our partners. Just going to talk a little bit about sort of how we approach racism and inequality in our work. We generally work through what we call a frame of opportunity. So we think about equality and racial equity through the opportunity for everyone to have an opportunity to succeed in life and have a successful life. And we see the challenges for that for people of color or other people who are traditionally marginalized as being in the structures, in the beliefs and assumptions, the policies that sort of run our communities, run our world. So transportation, to health inequity, to housing policy, to school policy, all of these things we see as working together to create a landscape where some opportunity and some people have less. And what we look to do is we look to study how that works through different types of data. We do reports, we do opportunity mapping, which is um, you know, computer mapping and modeling of who has that opportunity, who doesn't. We do a lot of report writing. We do a lot of social science research as well, community research, participatory research that we do with communities. And we put all that together to sort of create a picture of racism look like in terms of people being able to navigate structures in order to have the opportunities to have a successful life. And we primarily look at that in three lenses. First, we look at stresses. I think about regulations, laws, business practices, community practices. These are sort of the way that communities are structured, and how those communities are structured play a part in inequality, particularly for people of color, people who are poor, people who are otherwise marginalized. Then we talk about cognitive. So that is the realm of implicit bias. That's the realm of sort of how race plays out in the brain. Things like assumptions and narratives that we have, biases that people tend to have about people from different walk of life or different color or a different background that may affect everything from hiring to how people are treated in the criminal justice system, to healthcare, to schooling, to a myriad of other aspects, irregardless of structure. So we talk a little bit about how those biases are formed through messages that we hear, how the brain processes that, and how that plays a part in our decision making. The final lens is the lens I'm most familiar with, is the interpersonal lens. So, how do we navigate race in an interpersonal sphere, in our communities, in the way we make decisions and civic engagement, in the way we talk to each other? How are some voices more seen as more powerful, or how are some voices seen as less? And sort of how does that work? So we talk about things like cultural indicators of power. We talk about principles of equitable civic engagement. We talk about, we sort of show how the way our engagement structures are structured, the motivations and the assumptions that we have in those spaces can sometimes leave people out of the civic conversation, even when they're in the midst of it. So all of that kind of describes sort of the way we look at sort of racism and inequality in America. And we look at that through those lenses through all forms of inequality. So, of course, the Black-white paradigm is very, very popular, but we also have looked at racism in Latino and Latinx communities. We've worked in Pine Ridge, in North Dakota, to take a look at what inequality looks like in terms of Native American opportunity. We've also looked at women and gender and the intersection of gender and race. We've also looked at youth and young men of color, and looking to build a more expansive view of what that inequality looks like in an expanding and multicultural America. Let's see. In terms of what do we think, what does economic justice mean for us? Well, the way we kind of look at justice is sort of what does belonging and loving look like when done in the public, to quote Cornel West, plays a big part in the way we look at justice. Since we look at economic and racial justice through a lens of opportunity, we see economic justice as a state where everyone has the tools, the means, the resources, and the support and the inclusion in society to create a life that's successful for themselves within themselves. So not a state where economic justice is dependent on people leaving parts of themselves behind, but where they can bring their whole selves success. And So that's what we really look at when we're thinking about is opportunity authentically here? Are people authentically able to play a part in building their communities? Are people able to have an authentic racial not post-racial, cross-racial conversation with one another? These are all very important concepts to us when we're thinking about these things. And finally, I just want to talk about why we're so excited about this project. This is a project that's, like I said, is really new to us. We've not done anything in the realm of domestic violence survivors, but we know that through our health work, through our criminal justice work, that domestic violence is still one of those topics that by itself is taboo in a lot of places, but affects many people very broadly, and resources are stretched thin even under the best circumstances. So if we want to have a society where everyone has an opportunity to succeed and feel safe, we feel that really digging into this topic is very important, not just for domestic violence proponents, who are doing a fantastic job, thank you, but also for people involved in systemic work as well, because most of the challenges are also not only just person to person or place to place, but they're also systemic, and they're buried in the way we think about domestic violence, the way we think about gender, the way we think about race. Of course, all of these problems are exacerbated by inequitable structures for race and for women. And we really are excited to really take on that space and really uplift the fact that this inequality that affects both people of color and people from different genders, this sort of compounded inequality is an important factor to be taken into account, particularly now in the space that we find ourselves politically and socially. It's important for us to uplift this really, really important but often overlooked sector of inequality. So I hope that wasn't too long. It was this is just an exciting project, and I have a whole lot to say. I always have a lot to say about Kirwan, and I am very excited to be here. And I was excited to be able to give a chance to give this spotlight. So thank you.
Wow, thank you so much, Kip. And thank you for bringing your whole self into this work. As you said, so much of this is about perspective building and what comes out of when we throw all of those things into the middle of the room to really uplift and advance the work that we're doing in different spaces. So really grateful for your work, and thank you for being here and letting us put the spotlight on you for a little while. And for those watching this, we really encourage you to go to Kirwan and find out more about their work, what they do. You can go online. You can also keep in touch and keep an ear and eye out for the future work and opportunities to engage with Kirwan as well as our other REAP partners by going to csaj.org. So thank you again, Kip and Kirwan, and all that you bring to this, and thank you.
It was my pleasure. Thank you too, Sarah.